Welcome everybody to this Facebook Live. If you're watching the replay, just put the comment replay in the chat. In this session, I'm going to talk about strategies for activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So someone in my group asked a question about how to calm down their sympathetic nervous system and stimulate the vagus nerve. Doing so may support recovery if you have ME, CFS, fibromyalgia or long COVID. So Karen says hi. Hi Karen, do let me know where you are in the world if you like. Doris says hi. Before we dive into it, let's just pause for a moment. I'd invite you to close your eyes. Penny says hi. Karen is in Sweden. Penny's in Canada. I know where Doris is. So what I'd like to do is close your eyes and just make yourself comfortable. Obviously only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And I'd like you to just take a breath. As you breathe in through your nose, if that's comfortable to do so. Breathing into your belly, breathing out of your nose. Just ensure that you allow yourself to breathe in a nice, slow, gentle way. And as you breathe in, you might imagine that breath as a colour going into your lungs, oxygenating the blood, circulating around your body, nourishing the cells. And as you breathe out, just letting go of anything your body no longer needs. So just focus on your breath just for a moment, as a colour if you like. Coming into your body, into your lungs, and out of your body. And if you notice that you're thinking about anything, I just invite you to imagine popping that thought on a cloud and letting it float off. You just focus on that colour or on the breath coming into your body, and as you breathe out, you might just allow the out breath to be a little bit longer than the in breath. And when you're ready, you can just open your eyes. And just let me know, how was that? We did that literally for a minute. But how was it to just do that exercise? Leave a comment in the chat. So in this video, I want to share some tips that were shared by people in my Facebook group. And a few tips that I've added. Penny says that needed that relaxing. Doris says great. Sally says hi. Hi Sally, nice to see you. So this video is going to be the first of a series. It might be 2 videos, it might be 3. Just depends how much we get through today. I'm not recommending any particular strategies. Some may not have a scientific basis to support them, but some of the tips that I'm commenting on in this video do. In relation to the tips, use your judgment and discuss with your doctor, especially if you're experiencing acute symptoms, whether physical or psychological. Okay, and if you have any health conditions, for example, one tip is about the use of cold water. May not be appropriate, for instance, to have cold showers if you have a heart condition or are at risk of developing heart disease. So talk to your doctor, okay? So in this first video, I want to share some tips that relate to physical approaches. So there might be strategies that are physical, there might be strategies that are mental, there might be strategies that are either of those, but they're kind of soothing strategies, and we'll talk about those. But in this video, I'll talk about the physical approaches. Consider that not everything works for everyone. So something that you really like might not suit someone else. Something that someone else really likes might not suit you. So experiment, see what works for you. And if one thing doesn't work for you, try something else. Okay? So super brief explanations. The vagus nerve connects the brain to the body. It's actually two nerves. And the primary function of it is to activate our parasympathetic nervous response. And the parasympathetic nervous response is responsible for kind of rest, digest, healing functions. And the vagus nerve is involved in sensory and motor function. Some nerves do one and the other, some nerves do both. And what's interesting about the vagus nerve is 90% of the information that travels along that nerve goes from the organs to the brain, and only 10% goes from the brain to the organs. So it's an important feedback system. It's responsible for digestion, heart rate, breathing, cardiovascular activity, and reflex actions like coughing, sneezing, swallowing. It's part of the autonomic nervous system. And what's interesting about the autonomic nervous system is that it was so named because there was this idea that we couldn't influence it. And we now have evidence that that's not the case. There's an interesting study that was done some years ago with, I think, yogis in India. This is something I learned about when I was a student. And researchers were very interested to see that they could actually lower their heart rate through meditation, for example. Okay, so we can actually influence the function of some of those activities. So the first thing I want to talk about in the physical category is nutrition. So Andrew in my group says, it can take a while, but for me, the first thing that you might want to do is remove troublemaker foods like gluten, dairy, eggs, pork, soy, etc. that you may be having trouble with. For me, gluten is a lot of trouble for my sense of well-being. And Courtney Anderson responded to that saying, I couldn't believe how much of a game changer it was to eliminate dairy, caffeine and excess processed sugar. It took about 4 weeks to start fully feeling the benefits, but it has really helped. So I was advised by a doctor trained in nutritional medicine to cut out processed grains, dairy, which I wasn't tolerating, sugar, foods with yeast, and he said these things are all putting a stress on my body. And I was speaking to a health coach a while back who was saying that it's useful to cut out caffeine, so that's coffee, tea, chocolate, which I really love, so that was kind of challenging, palm and vegetable oils, which can encourage inflammation. Now, there is some interesting stuff about gluten. I was watching a video by Tim Spector, Professor Tim Spector, who studied nutrition. He was saying that gluten affects about 1% of the population, and if you have gluten issues, you'd know about it because you'd have quite extreme effects. But I'm also curious, is it possible to have lower level effects that maybe aren't so noticeable but can still be problematic, especially over time? I say that because I remember when one doctor diagnosed me as having candida. A doctor said to my mum, if he had candida, then he would be in hospital. And I thought that was really strange, because I thought, why would you wait until someone's symptoms are so extreme? And surely there must be a spectrum, because at one point my symptoms were really debilitating. And there were certain things I did, another video, that actually reversed the effects of candida. If that's what it is, it's not recognised by the medical profession. So Sally says gluten affects my brain. Yeah, so I'm kind of interested in what people say about what their experience is. But as I said at the beginning, caveat is that you've got to make your own decisions because some of this might not be scientifically validated. But there is research that shows zinc is beneficial to the vagus nerve, okay, as are omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which you find in seafood. This doctor that I mentioned actually suggested I take adaptogenic herbs, in particular ashwagandha, but there are others. If that's and I found that really useful when I was experiencing what this doctor thought was adrenal exhaustion. And there were times when just the slightest excitement would absolutely exhaust me. And I did find the ashwagandha helpful for that. I've made a separate video on that, so watch that. But as I say, discuss it with a herbal doctor, check with your doctor if you're on meds, if you've got health issues. I think some people don't advise ashwagandha if you're pregnant. Doris says, I cut all this for months very strictly, but had absolutely no effects. Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? These things work for some people, but not for everyone, which is what I said earlier. So one last thing about nutrition that can help you activate the parasympathetic nervous response is just to eat consciously, to actually be really aware of the sensation, the taste, and to kind of enjoy that. Doris says, plus all these supplements. Okay. And Sally says, dairy affects my stomach. Yeah, I really didn't tolerate dairy, and that's why I had to give it up. So let's move away from nutrition and look at some other physical approaches, starting with kind of physical treatments. A couple of people, Colleen and Christine Benefit, mentioned the benefits of Epsom salt baths, which is really good for relaxing the muscles. Joanne said, I've been using a TENS machine to stimulate the vagus nerve. I'm still on fairly low settings for short periods, but I can report a change. She says, my post-exertional malaise is reduced. She says, I still get symptoms, but recover more quickly. And prior to getting the machine, she says she was humming. A few people have mentioned the benefits of humming, or breathing out long with a vibrating type hum whenever I thought my heart rate was a bit fast or I needed to relax. And I felt that helped on these occasions. And that's what led me to trying the machine. She says, I think vagal tone is useful for everyone. She also says, and I think this is important, note that when I was in my severe phase, I couldn't have done these exercises. Even the humming would have been too much. But I did try breathing out longer than in, and that helped me feel more in control. So that's a really important point. I know there was a point where my breathing was really weird, and just being conscious of my breathing actually made me more self-conscious. Okay, what I did find is one thing that I found really helpful was just putting hand on my chest, hand on my belly, and just really focusing on slow diaphragmatic breathing. I'll talk more about breathing in a moment. Staying on the kind of physical stuff, consider that really slow movement can be helpful. Obviously, if you can do it. Kate says, humming sounds interesting. I'll look more at this. So there is research that shows that yoga can be helpful to activate vagal response. Tai Chi, Qigong, which again, they're very slow movements. One of the things Peter Levine talks about is shaking it off. If you notice you're experiencing some sensation in your body, animals, when they experience, stress, challenges, when the situation is over, they shake. They move their body, they shake it out. And I always remember when I was sailing in the Greek islands, our engine broke in the middle of the sea, and we had to sail up this bay, and the skipper was kind of shouting at us. I think she was making it more stressful than it actually was. But afterwards, someone suggested that 3 of the women on the boat were from New Zealand. I think one of them was Maori. And one of the women suggested we do this Maori exercise where you kind of clench your fists and then bring your whole body and you bend down and you make a kind of noise, whatever felt appropriate. And we did that a few times and it did seem to help just release the tension. And we did get everyone on the harbour gave us a clap as we moored up this quite narrow bay, which involved lots of tacking this way and that. Anyway, so in terms of treatments, some people have suggested acupuncture. I, at one point when I had ME, had craniosacral therapy. A friend was doing a course and I agreed to be a guinea pig, and I found it really calming. And what was particularly interesting is this happened on about 3 occasions. I think I had 3 or 4 sessions with this woman. And I'd be lying there receiving this treatment, which in itself was relaxing because it's physical. She was putting her hands on me, I think that's what was happening. But there was a certain point where I suddenly thought, oh, my mind's all over the place. I'm not really present. And so I just decided to just bring myself into the present moment, just focus on my breath, focus on the touch. And every time I did this, this practitioner said, wow, I've suddenly noticed a shift. And I said, oh, actually, well, I've just started kind of being a bit more present. And it seems like it's either a massive coincidence because it happened, as I say, 3 times. But she noticed a difference, okay? And actually, I've also had cranial osteopathy, and they talk about this kind of pulsing, that when things are working, they can sense this sensation in your body, which is a sign of things working correctly. So someone mentioned somatic practices and embodied awareness of sensations, so you can process old wounds. The word somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body. And as I've already mentioned, Peter Levine, he's developed methods specifically to help people heal trauma by helping them draw attention to their bodies. So he advocates, and other practitioners advocates, really simple techniques that you can use. One might be touch. And obviously if you can receive hugs from another person, great. Not everyone has access to another person. If we go back to that image, then consider that one thing you do is, can make physical contact with yourself, either giving yourself a hug, as that woman in the picture's doing. Peter Levine shares this exercise where he suggests you put one hand under one arm and your other hand on your other arm and just feel that physical sensation. You might want to do it now. Just close your eyes for a moment and just feel the physicality of doing that. How does that feel? So when you like, you can either just carry on holding yourself in that position, or when you finish, leave a comment. How did you find doing that exercise? A few people have mentioned, so there's massage, if you can't get a massage from other people, just self-massage, just massaging your hand or massaging your body. There's a practitioner of Chinese medicine called Katie Brindle who suggests just gently tapping down your arm up the underside, tapping all around your body. And again, that's just a way of really connecting to your physical body, doing that down the outside of your leg, on the upside of the inside of your leg coming up. A couple of people have mentioned, I think Colleen and Christine mentioned the havening technique. So Google it. There's a video by Paul McKenna showing you how to do that technique, as well as I think the chap who originated that method. And one of the things you do when you're doing the havening method is you can stroke your arms. Okay? Again, you might just try that right now. How's that feel, just to stroke your arms? Let me know. Okay, so there are a few techniques. Christine Bennett also mentioned a particular version of EFT called intention energy process. So check that out. A few people have mentioned gargling and splashing cold water on your face. Cold showers has been mentioned. Remember the caveat I gave earlier, not appropriate if you have a heart condition or are at risk of developing heart disease. Angeline Lucas in the group suggested self-soothing strategies. Anything you personally find calming, e.g. bubble bath, lighting candles. Something I like having baths with candles. Cuddling up in a blanket. Excuse me. Watching comedy. Acupressure mats. Vagus nerve exercises, some of which we've talked about. Grounding, breathwork. Tapping might also be worth exploring. And she says you can find vagus nerve, grounding, tapping and breath work online. There's a vast array of each. And she says, for me, grounding was the fastest acting and most accessible. As I mentioned, you can do grounding exercises, include mental ones, focusing on your mind. We'll talk about that in another video. Physical, focusing on your senses, which we've just talked about a bit. An example of that is eating that I mentioned. One thing that some people like is having an object in your pocket. It might be a smooth pebble. And you just touch it, feel it whenever you need. Hold it in your hand and feel the physicality of that object in your hand. Having body awareness. So one of the things that Peter Levine also talks about is just doing a really simple exercise like opening and closing your hands and observing that, and then closing your eyes and actually just experiencing the sensation internally. Okay, and the third one I mentioned is soothing, talking to yourself in very kind ways. There's a nice handout which maybe I'll link below this video from a university in America. Not all the strategies are appropriate for people with ME, but again, use the ones that feel appropriate. And one of the things I talk about is conscious self-care strategies. Anytime you do any self-care strategy, just remind yourself that you're doing it as a way of taking care of yourself because you deserve it. Could be just brushing your teeth, having a bath or shower, doing some gentle movement. So a number of people mentioned breath work, Penny being one, Natasha Kowalski-Dankos, excuse me if I haven't pronounced your name correctly, suggest a slow breath. For instance, breathe in for the count of 2, exhale for the count of 4, and work your way up to 4 to 6. Going at your comfort level helps, she says. Don't push yourself, just go slow. And she says also notice when you're in the situation where you've become upset or nervous and just try practicing this breath. Now there are a lot of variations on this. Colleen Downey mentioned the 4-7-8 breath by Dr. Weil. He suggests 4 cycles in the morning, 4 cycles in the afternoon. I'd say maybe I'll do another video where I just walk you through some of these exercises. She also says that Simon, has a number of relaxation strategies. She mentioned the Relax Deeply session. This is one that's purchasable, but I've also got some free ones. One is the timeout relaxation technique, which you can access when you join my Facebook group. And also one that I released recently is the mind massage guided visualization. If you'd like those, just leave a comment below and tag me, because sometimes I don't get notified of the comments, and I'll PM you the link to those things. So I'd say there's other variations. There's the 4-4-4-4 box breathing, which Lynn suggests. You might do 4-7 breathing in 4, breathing out 7. So 4-4 breathing is you breathe in 4, you hold for 4, you release for 4, you pause for 4, and then you repeat. So do whatever you find helpful. You know, if the 4-7 breathing or 7-11 breathing doesn't quite work, find what works for you, what your rhythm is. Couple of final things. Few people suggest singing. Research shows that singing can boost oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And a few people, as I mentioned humming already. So let's just pause there for a moment and let's just see if there's any other comments. Kate says, yeah, done this in yoga along with the shaking it off too. I find it good to ground myself. And Doris says, breathing is great when, for example, meditation is hard. If you've got any final comments, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll pause there. But let me ask you, what, from what I've shared so far, is one takeaway? What's one thing you could implement? So leave a comment. It'd be interesting to hear what action you're going to take. All about action. Penny says, thank you. You are welcome. Karen says, thank you. You are welcome, Karen, also. And everyone else who is watching. So if you're watching on YouTube, do subscribe for more content. And if you found the video helpful, please do share with others. So Penny says she may try the shaking off. Yeah, it's very interesting that animals, have intuitive ways of dealing with stress. One is that they express themselves. One is they shake it off. And Peter Levine, I'll leave you with this little story of Peter Levine talks about, I think, lion cubs being chased by a cheetah, and they run up a tree. And when the cheetah goes off and they know they're safe, they come down and they actually practice chasing each other and running away. And Peter Levine says that serves a couple of functions. One is to just get rid of some of that adrenaline. And the second is it just helps them practice what they need to do if that situation arises again. And obviously there's something I haven't mentioned, but a typical way that one thing healthy people do to calm their physiology is to do strenuous physical activity. Obviously that's not appropriate if you're fatigued and if you know that doing that strenuous activity is just going to leave you with post-exertional malaise. So just think about what you can do. Karen says, I'm going to practice physical touch. Kate says, thanks a lot. Lots to think about. Going to watch again. So you are welcome. So thanks everybody for participating. It's always more interesting to get your interaction. If you've got any questions or comments, comment below. I've actually got to go into central London now on the bus because of the tubes aren't working. So it's going to be quite a long journey. But for now, I'll say thanks for watching, wishing you great health, and bye for now.